Velocity Gaming, an org that is loved by gamers across every corner of this country. They have been the label for South Asian Valorant beside global esports for the last 3 years and have achieved numerous titles, trophies and championships across the last 3 years of their existence in India. Backed by one of the most passionate and giving owners out there, Velocity succeeded in India thanks to one VLT Sentinel who wanted to put Indian esports on the international map. But unfortunately, after years of struggle, trying and hard work, it seems like Velocity Gaming's journey might have finally come to a stop in India. Is this really the end of Velocity Gaming? When Riot opened up the opportunity for international competitions, India was ready. Everyone knew it would be VLT or GE at that time, but VLT had such a strong grasp after their unbeaten 2020 year that everyone thought they would be the ones to qualify, but
one more kill and they've done it. GE are just a kill away from winning this VCC and heading to the APAC last chance qualifiers. And who other than SK Rossi to close it out? The champions of the VCC are Global Esports. They take down VLT and now they're the champions of the region, India's representatives in APAC.
Heartbreak. The first international qualification event for India to the APAC, and VLT fell short by the smallest margin. They weren't giving up just yet though. Whilst 2021 wasn't the start they were hoping for, they were able to finish off the year winning multiple tournaments in a row, building up their momentum for the next year's VCC. They made their roster changes, got in Deathmaker, had MW1 coming in and out of the roster, and basically had a solid team. This time, they were ready. VLT went into VCC 2022 with their best form and absolutely massacred the competition. They went on to win the competition unbeaten, and it seemed as though VLT had reached their peak. But even though they had all the domestic success that they could think of, the internationals just didn't seem to be a place they were ready for yet. Post that, things only seemed to be getting worse. Velocity were a shadow of their previous selves in the second half of 2022. It looked like they had lost their soul. And that's when Riot decided to change everything we know about competitive Valorant. The Challenger Leagues, the Ascension, the Franchise League were announced, and as every hopeful team out there, VLT too applied to be accepted into the Franchise League. But unfortunately, they didn't have as much merit as their rivals GE, who did get chosen to be a part of the Eternals of Valorant. But this didn't mean that it was the end of the road for Velocity. Ascension was a prospect that they were really looking forward to, absolutely, because they wanted to take over, and Sentinel had no intention of stopping his team right now. After bidding adieu to their prodigy Deadly 10, VLT were quiet for some time, but rumors of their roster moves started swiveling up. It was getting a lot more exciting because for the first time ever, after going all out and pulling out all stops, VLT had the additions of Eccles from 100 Thieves and Liquid, and Doma from Fnatic to play alongside a team that had an explosive Excali, a clinical Deathmaker, and a pillar in Helif. 2 European and NA imports to join an Indian team, this had never been done before. They also had Amaterasu's Mind as a mentor on the bench and Davi as the coach to guide them into battle. It almost literally seemed unfair at the moment. Everyone looked at this team and thought, yeah, this has to be it. This has to be Velocity's greatest rise and moment in all of their existence so far. A mixture of experience and firepower with some great minds really made it seem like VLT were going to take it all. But life, it seems, has its way of working things out in ways you'd never expect. Velocity were the favourites by a mile going into the very erratically announced VCL SA Split 1. OG were looking really strong too, but everyone was rooting for Velocity to blow out the competition, which they did seemingly do for a while. Velocity started off on the strongest foot possible on Split 1, taking on their entire group and going unbeaten. Not even a single map was given away by them as they took down God's Reign, True Rippers, MLT Esports and Godlike pretty convincingly. The roster was looking solid, and after every match that they played, they only seemed to be improving their game and team chemistry. After going 4-0, everyone thought, yeah, alright, VLT are just looking far too good. But little did anyone know what was going to follow. Velocity had a change made in their roster going into the playoffs. They brought in Amaterasu and sat Deathmaker out for the tie against True Rippers. Quite a few people obviously questioned this decision because it was sudden and it didn't really seem to bother VLT on the other hand, at least on map 1. They took Pearl in dominating fashion, which was True Ripper's pick. VLT looked really strong and were looking forward to their pick of Split as well, which honestly was a very close game. But to their surprise, True Rippers were able to take them to map 3, which was Haven. VLT historically have always loved and considered Haven to be one of their best maps, which was visible in the first half at least. They went up 9-3 and it looked like almost the game was over. But how can one forget the curse that loomed on VLT's head for the last 2 years with that damned scoreline?
Gonna come down to this post plant and Aryu is able to find the trade. Now it's a 3-on-3 scenario. Hellfighter's position compromised. And True Rippers, they're pushing the boundaries where they don't really need to. The overcommitment's not going to work out in their favor, but Echoes will at least able to get one. And this crossfire's perfect. And True Rippers, they win it against VLT.
True Rippers started playing a lot more coordinated and took the series 2-1, stunning everyone, especially VLT, because in that defensive half, VLT managed to just win 1 round. Everyone thought that this experiment to bring in Amaterasu was a little on the edge because whilst they did get a good start, TR handed them a comeback victory, and this is where everything that went wrong for Velocity started. The word experiment became a nightmare for them as they continued to play with the same 5 against God's Reign as well in their lower bracket match, where things derailed even more as VLT at this point were making really minor mistakes that a team of their caliber wouldn't be expected to, and if that wasn't enough, then...
And he doesn't know where the enemies are, he knows only the position of Echo, doesn't know that Doma's already around him.
What? No! What?
No
Oh
way!
my god! No way!
Make it work, especially when Doma slicing and dicing like that. The run and gun doesn't work out for him, and the trades are even. God's Reign still have the numbers, but Hellfighter in the smoke goes unchecked. This could be a massive opportunity if he plays his cards right. Amaterasu has been revealed by the recon dart.
Oh my god,
missed the
what?
opportunity once again!
What?
You can't have this! You can't keep doing this, man!
At the end of the intense bout, Velocity were again beaten by a team that they had already beaten before. Now, naturally, a lot of people started feeling very weird about this roster change of getting Amaterasu in and benching Deathmaker, who is the spearhead of the team and was in rather good form, although Doma was doing well as the Jet. Fans were constantly asking what is the reason for this change because VLT lost to 2 teams that they had beaten previously in the group stage without the change of the roster. So there were of course blames being thrown around at the management and the decision to bring in Amaterasu in place of Deathmaker and whatnot. But VLT was seemingly making these decisions and were confident in them because they obviously knew what they were doing. We don't know what happens in their practices or theory sessions, and they obviously must have made this decision on the basis of some discussions, set pieces, and some factual discoveries that they would have done with the roster. Either way, they bowed out of Split 1 in 5th-6th place, completely unexpected of them, but they weren't hazed as much because VLT's main focus was to qualify for Ascension, which would only be decided in Split 2. There were a couple of days that VLT got since their early elimination to practice and prepare for Split 2, and all their fans were definitely hoping and confident that VLT wouldn't be conducting any more experiments because this was quite literally the biggest moment of their entire existence. The commencement of Split 2 saw VLT, OG and the newly added Revenant all in the same group alongside Reckoning and MLT. It was clear that this was a group of death and VLT had to give it their all. Game 1, VLT vs OG. The matchup that everyone was waiting for since Split 1. The Titans. But going into this one, OG were more of the favorites than VLT given that they just came off of winning Split 1 in dominating fashion. When all was ready, the players walked onto the stage. People didn't expect what was going to happen and well, Velocity had another change to their roster. This time it was Doma who was benched and Deathmaker made his way to the playing 5 against OG. People were really skeptical the minute they saw the walk-ins itself and said that OG are going to take this one with ease, and well, they weren't wrong. Mistakes upon mistakes from Velocity. Things only seemed to be getting worse. OG were looking like an unstoppable force. VLT seemed like they had no coordination, and on their map pick of Haven, they were handed a very harsh 13-2 loss. VLT couldn't read OG or even understand what was happening. Individual duels, miscommunication, off-ended plays, not checking corners at times, everything. VLT were having problems across the board, but they had to focus on the next map. On Ascent, they at least were able to string a few rounds together in the first half. Deathmaker had woken up and given the team a few moments of hope, but the rest of VLT just couldn't keep up with the pace and confidence of OG. Orangutan took the first half 8-4, with the last 2 rounds of that half being very weirdly played by VLT. No one was watching mid at one point, no KJ util either, which allowed Rawfuel to find a very weirdly positioned Amaterasu in the open, and Eccles just trying to save his life from the Sova ult. Follow that up by getting a first pick, only to give away 2 by peeking out in the open again with no info from Helef, and Eccles too, which casually gave OG back the man advantage. Amaterasu couldn't connect his aim, Excali pushed too soon through a smoke while DM was still rotating and was left alone to die. Couple of minutes later, 13-7. OG 2-0'd VLT in a fashion that they've probably not been beaten before ever in the series. It was shocking because a lot of fans thought that this would be a very close matchup. But this wouldn't be the only painful loss for VLT. They did beat MLT Esports. VLT gave themselves a bit of hope and confidence. They went on with the same playing 5 as against OG and were able to comfortably beat MLT 2-0, but were going to face the newcomers next, Revenant Esports. And this is where the pain continued for them. Going into this game, Velocity made yet another change. They brought in Doma in place of Eccles this time, which is their third variety of change, and people were now losing their minds. They were confused as to why there are so many roster changes happening when they needed to have a solid winning 5, which they did in the Split 1 group stage. The maps were Split, Bind and Haven if needed, and Revenant decided that it wasn't, especially Paradox, because he showed up big time. Revenant almost toyed with VLT, who had a rather questionable agent pick, having very less actual executionary utility and seemed to be more focused around fights on Split. They didn't really win as many of their duels either. RNT had a Breach and a Sky with a Raze as well, who had far more utility than all of VLT. It didn't work, and Revenant beat VLT 13-5 on their opponent's map pick, while Paradox casually dropped 27 kills against them. On Bind, VLT said enough. They wanted to change the game. They took early initiative and were winning some pretty good rounds. Deathmaker, Amaterasu and Doma had a kick in their step and gave VLT an early 6-2 lead. But Revenant decided to switch up their gameplay and started making more heavy stacked moves and got themselves up to 6-4. Although Velocity thought that Paradox had probably been a lot more quiet on this map of Bind for so long, he went ahead and did this.
We have one ultimate less to worry about in this half, and Hellas starts on a very positive note too. The orbital strike will force the players to use, but exactly the timing is not in his favor. Does he see the gun barrel? Of course he does.
No way!
Back onto Excali. Need and a whole lot of ching too, and they don't need any of it because
Paradox started his showcase in the second half yet again after that ace, and everyone else from RNT were chipping in with impact kills, whilst VLT's strategies were honestly being read by a book. They seemed incomplete at times. Revenant were ready for anything and everything, it seemed, and it ended the match in the only way it could have. In heartbreak, with milliseconds
and Doma's
to spare.
flank finally comes into effect, but Ace shuts it down before he can make too much of an impact. The time has run out, but Ace is taking it! Amaterasu can't shoot him in time!
Revenant 2, VLT 0. VLT were 1-2 in groups and were on the brink of elimination. Their final opponent was Reckoning Esports, a team that they have lost to only once in all of the times that they've faced them so far. But it seemed like VLT's problems had gone far too beyond repair. Reckoning saw that and capitalized on them and found a crushing victory against VLT. On Lotus, Reckoning went 11-1 up against VLT. Deathmaker on the Raze, which could have been better on Excali's hands maybe. Amaterasu not being able to show his impact on the Breach. Doma being the only performer in that squad. Velocity's dreams were crumbling apart in front of their faces. Whilst Velocity were able to muster up 5 rounds in the second half, it was all they could get as one simple crossfire, and VLT's late decision making as to where they want to go ended the map 13-6.
Flavin's position known, it does not even matter. They just run right into a crossfire, give the spike into their hands, all three directions, and a shorty in the hands of Deadly. We don't even see the finale, but we know that team Reckoning Esports.
And Bind? Well, Flavin was absolutely outstanding, taking over from Deadly to become the top fragger in the second map. Voya showed up big, and it seemed to be almost too comfortable for Reckoning. VLT could never get their timings right. They couldn't get their duels lost to be traded, couldn't hold on to their crossfires or double peaks or any executes for that matter. Reckoning outplayed VLT across the series and sent them home. They were just better and superior in almost every sense, and Velocity knelt down to take the defeat straight to the chest. Harder than any previous one so far. RGE 2, Velocity 0. Heartbreak, despair, disappointment. These are just words at this point because nothing could describe what we were watching. Nothing could explain what those players were feeling themselves and going through. Nothing could we see on our screens but just pain. The pain of this Titan's fall from grace is harder than we've seen any before. Velocity Gaming, defeated, dejected, destroyed. Never thought these words would be used to describe them, but here we are. Is this really how they end? We don't know yet officially, but by the looks of what we saw from VLT Sentinel and the other players on social media, it might just be it. But all of us need to know that yes, while they are themselves responsible for this loss, yes, they made mistakes, yes, they had their moments, but they are probably feeling this loss more than anyone else. Imagine being a team that everyone sees as potential champs, including me too, to fall from the group stages, that too in this fashion. It is heartbreaking. This is the worst loss they've suffered. The changes they made to their roster might have multiple valid reasons behind them. Someone might not be comfortable in a certain role. Someone might want to play a different agent in the same agent field. Communication issues between the players might be another reason because Hindi and English might get mixed up and whatnot. Give feedback, yes, but maybe give them a little space to process it as well. All of your hopes and probably most fans out there were on their shoulders, and they obviously wanted to deliver for the fans. That's what Velocity has always been about. Their fans have been like their family. And family do get angry at each other and do get to give feedback and complain about each other. But at the end of the day, that's whom that we love the most as well. We forgive our family and we look towards the future. No matter what happens in the coming days, since Valorant's inception in India, remember that they were the first ones to come into the scene professionally and blow it up and give everyone what they were missing from CSGO. Remember every moment that you might have shared with your friends supporting this team, having great memories. Remember, always remember, whether they're here or not, they will always make you feel the velocity.